1. A little background info. My wife and I purchased our house a few years ago, and the day we moved in, our neighbor, Roger, called the cops on us for moving in too loud. We weren't playing music or even talking amongst ourselves, just my wife and I moving our belongings into our new house. Cops came, I explained that I was just moving in, and they apologized for bothering us. Roger, in all of his retired proud boy glory, comes out of his house immediately after they left to let us know that he is the one who called the cops, and in more words says he is setting the tone for our new life. Even still, we were super cordial with this guy because we wanted to make a good impression in our new neighborhood. It's our first home, and it was important to us to make it homey. After about a year or so, our first son is born. We let our property fall to the back burner while we adjusted to parenthood, and a few newspapers pile up in our driveway and, in the rain, sort of melt onto our driveway. All on our property. Roger comes knocking on our door to complain. I tell him I'm sorry, and that we let it get away from us. I explain that we have a newborn son, and I would get to it ASAP. He digs in and starts telling me how when he was a new father, he didn't let anything affect his property, and he tells me I'm being lazy. I said, then why don't you pick it up if you're so worried about it? To which he says, no, I want you to pick up the fucking mess. I was trying to be semi-cordial still, but I'm not interested in unnecessary conflict with my neighbor, so I told him fine. I will get to it, and he left. Later that year, Roger comes over one day to ask if he can trim the tree that hangs over my fence onto his side of the fence. And I'm fine with it, so I say no problem. And he casually mentions how one time when a 17-year-old kid, friends with his delinquent drug addict son at the time, broke into his garage, he hit him in the head with a baseball bat until he suffered brain damage, not the word he used, and the police came and he was cleared of all responsibility because it was a break-in. He's smiling and laughing while telling me this. Noted, I'm thinking to myself, this guy is a fucking piece of shit psychopath. Well, it's a couple of years later now, and a few more minor run-ins, but nothing too significant, and my wife and I just had our second son 1 month ago. About 10 days ago, son isn't even 3 weeks old at this time. I get a notice in my door saying my lawn is in violation of my city's code. I mowed it 2 days before my son was born, so it's been about 3 weeks since I mowed, and it's been raining since. I have 48 hours to comply. I call the number on the card, and no answer, so I call the non-emergency line to verify what my responsibility is, because of the vague wording on the door hanger. It's because one of those types of grass in my lawn, growing very sparsely, like 1 blade per square inch, is over 12 inches tall. The majority of the grass was like 2 to 3 inches long, but there was another type there as well that grew faster. I told them that I'm a new father and asked for an extension to deal with it later. They said don't worry about the lawn, just take care of the baby. So now with some newfound confidence, I mow my lawn in a spiral shape, leaving lots of grass remaining as a middle finger to whoever, we know who it was at this point in the story, right, called the cops on me about my lawn. A couple of days later, Roger talks to me over our shared backyard fence and asks about my lawnmower and if it's busted or something. I told him no, I just have more important priorities than mowing my lawn. And I tell him about my new son. And then I asked if he was the one who called the cops on me about it. He said he called code enforcement, but not on me. He called on my new neighbors on my other side, a really nice Mexican family who is always diligent about their lawn and always working outside on their new property. He says code enforcement must have followed my lawn when they went to follow up on his call next door. At this point, I say something along the lines of, look, I'm a pretty fucking cool guy. If you have a concern about my property, then you can speak with me directly. He swears up and down that he didn't call on me and that it was just a coincidence. Whatever. About a week after that, yesterday, he knocks on my door and I already know what's coming. I answer the door, kind of chuckling, and greet him. He's kind of chuckling too at this point because it's fucking ridiculous. He says, yes, you said I could talk with you if I had an issue with your property. I tell him, yeah, by all means. He gestures to my lawn. and asks what it's about. I say, it's kind of a middle finger to whoever called the code enforcement on me. He's irate, says it's a middle finger to him. I stop him and remind me that he told me he didn't call them on me and he shouldn't feel targeted. He ignores me and restarts his sentence the same way again. So I cut him off again and I say, I specifically am telling you it's not a middle finger to you, Roger. If it's a middle finger to me, this means war. Over what? I asked, laughing. He's getting bigger and huffier by the second and tells me I'm a lazy piece of shit and my property is in shambles. Ha! And that all the other neighbors mow their lawn. I remind him that I have a newborn son and that my lawn can suck my dick for now. He puffs up as big as he can and says, I never had an issue when I was a new father. I told him I don't give a shit about what he did as a dad. Ironically enough, his drug addict son lives in the house on the other side of him and causes trouble in the neighborhood regularly. Cars peeling out, people screaming at each other, drug addicts always waiting outside, etc. Now he tells me that he's going to call code enforcement on me every day, and I tell him to get the fuck off my property. He says, move me. So I tell him I'm calling the cops and he says do it, so I grab my phone and start dialing. He walks to the sidewalk and keeps yelling at me about how I'm lazy and not fit to own my property. Cops come and speak with us, very anticlimactic. They did make sure to let him know that he needs to get off my property when I say so, and that's all I wanted from them. Tomorrow I'm going to take my hedge trimmers to mow my maze down to 11 inches. Fuck you, Roger. 2. Listen, this might sound a bit extra, but have you tried to use Glassdoor before? If you haven't, go try it. I'm serious. See how far you will get before it harasses you into signing up for their site. But I can just simply sign in with my Google account, you say. Wrong. It won't let you go back to viewing their page after signing in. No, it forces you to give them details about your job title, your company, your location, your salary, your years of experience. Although there is thankfully a skip button when it gets to the review part, it's hard to even notice it, and it forces you into it again later. Okay, I kind of get it, they need data. That's what makes the website useful. But here's the problem, I don't have a fucking job, I graduated college last year, and some health issues, etc. So what the hell should I enter when it's forcing me to answer questions about my job? It is ironic that they're withholding information that could help me get a job, because I don't already have a job. Or is it prejudiced against the unemployed? I can't decide. I'll tell you what. Job title: male prostitute, company, Glassdoor, location, Las Vegas, Nevada, salary, $69,000. All ratings, 1 star. Pros, 5-word minimum, none, there are no pros. Cons: my talents are truly going to waste at Glassdoor. No one wants to hire me to fuck them because the company's website is the most atrocious thing they've ever had to interact with on the internet. I don't blame them, frankly. How can they trust me to give them a good time if this is the company I represent? No one is having a good time in this website. No one. Glassdoor, get a fucking UX team. If you have one already, get a new one. This stinks. Advice for management: fix your website. Forcing people into signing up and giving reviews to simply view a page that they got from a search engine is really fucking obnoxious and completely unhelpful for people looking for their first job. You're forcing people to give false data when you do this. How is that helpful for anyone? Give people the option to skip it. No one wants to sign up for your website when you force them. Sincerely, a male prostitute who just handed in his resignation. I seriously doubt it'll ever make it to their page of public reviews, which looks rigged as shit, by the way. But I just hope some employee that is complicit in this heinous design choice reads it. My review fell short of the level of copy-pasta vibes I was hoping for, so if anyone wants to improve upon it in the comments, please do. In conclusion, Glassdoor's website has the temperament of a sleazy frat boy who won't take no for an answer. Wait, no. Glassdoor's website is the virtual embodiment of an arrogant, crusty old businessman who invites his young female intern to a private meeting to discuss promoting her. only to say that it is contingent upon her performing a sexual favor. Yes, I am still angry. I've dealt with too many dysfunctional websites lately, so this was the last straw. Apologies that this isn't really a triumphant PettyRevenge story. In all honesty, this is partially an attempt at a cathartic writing exercise, and partially the next step in my campaign to tarnish their name. No offense intended to male prostitutes, frat boys, businessmen, or anything else. Full offense intended to the employees at Glassdoor who made their website like this. Fuck them. Fuck them. 3. So this story happened back in 2018. For some context, it happens in France. And here every building has big bins for the trash, managed by the building but owned by City Hall. Or a service working for City Hall. Not even sure, actually. So back to the story. In 2018, my mom needed a knee surgery and couldn't walk for about 3 months. We were working together in a family-owned business, and because the business is actually very close to her home, she asked me to push her wheelchair to bring her to work and bring her back every evening. No such thing as a recovery vacation or whenever you own a business. What pissed me off fairly quickly back then was, on the way there was a street lamp, and the only way to pass it was behind. But there was a business, a clothing store, who was used to leaving their trash bins behind the lamp, effectively blocking the way for her wheelchair, as the front side wasn't large enough. So every morning and every evening I had to move all the bins in order to make way for the chair. 3, actually. There was the business blocking, but also 2 more blocking it. Then one day in the evening, while moving them frigging bins, a wild jerk appeared. He came out of the clothing store and was like, with a very passive-aggressive tone, so is you moving them every day? You gotta put these bins back in their spot. And my mind went half blank because I honestly never expected someone to come out and complain. I mean, I was the one who was supposed to complain, right? And then I said something like, you realize I'm moving them to make way for my mother in her wheelchair? And he even more aggressively said, yeah, I don't care. These bins got their spot here for years, so you don't move them. Or if you do, you have to put them back. At this point, I started to get angry, but still managed to stay composed and told him that this is a public sidewalk, not his bin spots, and because of the street lamp, I have to move them to make way. Then he said one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Yeah, if you want to complain about the lamp, then file a complaint to City Hall to move it. That's not my problem. At this point, I was on the verge of losing it, but also shocked. I mean, the idiot was blocking the sidewalk with his trash, acting like a jerk, and telling a woman in a wheelchair that she's got to complain to the City Hall about their lamps, when he's the one blocking the path. Seeing my face getting redder, when I get angry or tipsy, my face quickly gets red, like very red. My mom just told me it wasn't worth it, and to put his bins back, so I did. But being a grudgy asshole when pissed at someone, I didn't let the story end here. You see, when I go to work, if I make just a little detour, I pass by this same building with its stupid bins still blocking the way behind the street lamp. So for the following year, until COVID hit actually, I kept going through there every morning and evening, and I kept moving these bins every goddamn day, while laughing sadistically, imagining the jerk's face. Just to clarify, the reason he likes his bins there was because the window of his shop was right above it, and he liked to just open his window and throw whatever he had to throw, as he owned a clothing store and there were a lot of cardboard boxes and other stuff that he throws in his bin every day. I guess taking 5 minutes more to actually come out and toss them was too harsh for him. 4. A bit of context up front. I work in logistics. To put it simple, the company is a regional pillar in the major and minor kitchen appliances scene. We sell, service, and install them. If I'm in the store, I take in all new inventory, label, repackage them, and store the product. Same goes for spare parts that our service team uses. With installation having around 12 teams at 2 people, and the service technicians being around 10 on their own. When I'm not in the store, I simply deliver the appliances that customers just want to be delivered. Besides that, I'm often helping with whatever others need an extra hand with. I've been doing this for roughly 2 years now, being back where I did my apprenticeship in sales. Things have never been super smooth. It's a business after all. Mistakes happen. First, it was taken back appliances dumped on my spot in the warehouse to be taken into the repair shop downtown. Same where I work internally. Without asking me or informing me. Just dumped so I could hush-hush and do my job. I'm not petty, generally. I love doing an honest job for honest money, even when I'm being paid minimum wage and working more hours than 90% of the teams doing installations. I start coming in at 6:45-ish to 7 a.m. Sometimes I do lunch, other times I don't. I leave at 4 p.m. generally, if there's nothing left to do. There's a few black sheep, but one in particular grinds my gears. Shoddy at work, leave stuff that's not doable, but is when others try to work it out, and likes to be a pain in the ass for me at all times. Thursdays, it is his routine to pick up his kids, he is divorced, at 4 p.m., allegedly. So, of course, he can't work later, right? On countless occasions, I was tasked with picking up old appliances he didn't have the space for. Always around 12 a.m. to 2 p.m., my dispatcher would call me and ask me nicely. When I'm back at the warehouse, he was gone, mostly between 2 and 3 p.m. What a guy, am I right? No space for old stuff, but the new stuff? No problemo. Last week I was scheduled on Thursday to help another colleague with a side-by-side fridge setup. Basically 2 refrigerator units and freezer units, wine cooler units, besides bolted together. Averaging 80 kilograms each, standing at roughly 1.9 meters tall, and a bitch and a half if you have to get them upstairs, which were heavy on one unit. The heavier one being 108 kilograms on the label. No big worries, we were 3 guys. Got the call from my dispatcher early Wednesday afternoon. No problem. 1 to 2 hours later, the customer apparently cancelled that scheduled time. No problem. Before going home, I see the douche's pile of appliances for the next day. Looky here, also a side-by-side. Not my problem. They surely figured something out. A year back, I would have called and went out of my way to assist where I can. Today, I couldn't give less of a lick. Clarifying that 99% of installation teams are a duo. Q Thursday, 2 p.m. I'm in the warehouse out of town helping. Or better said, finishing what the irresponsible worker, a friend of mine, told me I could do. Moving wooden pallets from one end to the other and fixing up a small delivery to our store consisting of 7 to 8 grills in varying sizes a sales clerk asked me to do days earlier. During this, I glimpsed outside. Douche drove in, loading up the monstrous side-by-side fridges and leaving. 20 minutes later, my dispatcher calls. Better yet, his colleague. "Hey, OP, do you have by any chance time to go down?" 25 minutes out, to help douche. Fortuna favors the bold, echoes in my mind. Actually, no, I got stuff here that shouldn't be piled up, sorry. No worries, I'll tell douche. Biggest shit-eating grin I had in a while. My friend, the warehouse worker, jokingly said, "Well, that was shitty." Next day, I hear douche being somewhat pissed about the ordeal. "So sorry, fella, but not helping you fuck off when I would have arrived. Since that is what would have happened. Wouldn't be the first time he pulled that stunt." And his colleague that day just told me whilst I was driving him home how shitty that was of me. Patience is truly key. Been waiting for a long time to get an opportunity like this. Normally, I'm the one they call for this type of emergency stuff, since no one else picks up the phone. But now I got the last laugh on this. 5. The preface. To start this off, I want to admit that when I was in school, the concept of allergies was sort of new to anyone who didn't live with them on a daily basis. And people outside the know didn't take things as seriously as they do now. Nobody was banned from eating peanuts on an airplane. Restaurants were still new to the idea of cross-contaminating allergens. If you were allergic, you simply didn't eat it, or eat in that establishment. But no consideration was really given about anyone who could have a reaction just because someone was eating a PB&J sandwich one seat down. My mom was allergic to peppers, bell, jalapeno, etc., and for the uninitiated, the spiciness of said pepper is completely moot. It's not the Caspasian, it's the anaphylaxis that comes from the whole pepper family. Sorry for the mini rant, this is a thing that I still hear even to this day. Now me, I have an intolerance. Mom needs to be hospitalized. I unleash the evil. The story. Home economics class existed for the sole purpose of teaching you how to cook. And by teaching you how to cook, I mean kitchen safety and figuring out how to make, read, and follow a recipe. The classroom was partitioned off into multiple kitchens with several students per kitchen, and various jobs that rotated through the students. My teacher, a woman who we shall call Mrs. Idiot, was a cantankerous, middle-aged, overweight hag-raven of a woman that nobody actually liked. Mrs. Idiot would stomp about during the cooking, squawking in her crone voice about this and that. "Your dishwater is too cold. Wash everything again and use hot water this time." Just hot enough that it physically hurts to put my hands in it. "Why haven't you done X yet? I don't care if Y needs to be done first. Do X immediately, or I'll drop your grade here and now." This is literally impossible. How can you be this goddamn spiteful? Mrs. Idiot was also a firm believer in teaching us how to prepare cultural foods. This would have been fine if Mrs. Idiot didn't also believe, with the fervor of a cultist, that if it didn't have peppers in it, then it was bland and tasteless. That's right, folks. Garlic powder, onion powder, even salt. None of these things actually seasoned foods. They merely enhanced the god known as the pepper. I'm sure you're already dreading what's coming. The first recipe we made had bell pepper in it, and I attempted to explain to her that while I didn't have an allergy, I still wasn't advised to eat the food we had prepared. However, since I wouldn't be hospitalized for anaphylaxis by this food, she snappily told me that she expected everyone to eat their portion, since the portions were small. When I tried to explain the horror that was the evil, she cut me off and said that I needed to stop being a picky eater and expand my horizons a bit. My fellow group members were more sympathetic and just set my place without putting food before me. Since they had no such dietary limitations, they were perfectly happy to accept my portion and redistribute it among themselves. Teens and food, I promise, nothing went to waste. Well, when the next recipe was the next week, this time it was vegetable wontons. Yes, with bell pepper as one of the ingredients, and wontons were to be fried in oil. Well, it just so happened that I had been having other food-related problems, and turned out that I have an overactive gallbladder. This meant that food that was greasy or oily was not taken well by my digestive tract. It caused horrendous cramps that lasted for hours and enhanced the evil in ways nobody would enjoy. Mrs. Idiot was looking straight at me when she told us that she expected everyone to eat their portion of food with no arguing or skipping out on trying new things, or else she would be docking entire letters from our final grade for every instance. If you had an A and didn't eat the food just once, you would get a B for the final grade, etc. And she had many recipes, 99% of which had bell pepper somewhere. Malicious compliance. So let's make sure everyone understands. Peppers cause the evil. Oily foods can act as an enhancer for said the evil. And I had just been ordered to eat something that would blow right past the perfect storm and straight into an apocalypse. My fellow students watched me with expressions that ranged from anxious concern to flight, no fight, at the drop of a pin as I forced myself to eat the 3 wontons on my plate. I had patted as much of the oil off as possible with a paper towel, but knew that this would do nothing to help. Class ended. Mrs. Idiot looked smugly at me as I left. My body was beginning to make low noises of unhappiness in the next period. That hour passed with nothing significant happening. However, the period after that, the first toll of the apocalypse rang. In a quiet classroom of about 30 kids, my gut made a sound somewhere between a horny humpback whale and the screams of the damned. I was on my feet and bolting for the door without waiting to be excused, shouting, "Mrs. Idiot forced me to eat something that made me sick," at the teacher and many, many witnesses, some of whom knew exactly what had happened. I now had 2 minutes, 2 precious minutes to bolt down the hallway to make it to the bathroom. I heard a hall monitor shout something, probably about running in the halls and needing a pass to be in said halls during class time. But the world had narrowed to the Olympic sprint I was doing. I dove into the bathroom and landed on the toilet just in time. The evil had arrived. Agony ripped through my middle, and I doubled over as much as I could on the toilet as I unleashed a substance that probably caused the porcelain to hiss and smoke beneath me. In a haze of pain and misery, I heard the bathroom door click open, a heartbeat of silence as my body made horrendous, unearthly sounds and smells, and a teacher's voice muttering, "Jesus, tap-dancing Christ!" before the bathroom door gently closed again. 5 courtesy flushes and a redwood forest of toilet paper later, I hobbled out of my stall, washed my badly shaking hands, and left the bathroom. The hall monitor turned out to be a teacher who was considered kind of cool, and she used mild swears if something impressed her enough, and the teens loved her for it. She was standing well back from the bathroom door, trying not to clap a hand over her mouth and nose. With a calm voice that did not match her horrified eyes, she asked me, "What the hell happened to you, OP?" Walking like a 90-year-old woman in desperate need of a walker, I explained what Mrs. Idiot had done to me 2 periods ago. She was silent for a heartbeat, then said softly, "Come on, let's get you to the office, we'll send you home." The walk was much longer than I remember the halls ever being before, but I was eventually put on a bench while the adults talked in hazy, incomprehensible words. My stomach felt like I had called an orc a sissy, and he had taught me manners with his fists. At one point, the principal came to ask me some questions in a very, very gentle voice, assured me that my mom had already been called, and informed me that there was a bathroom out the door and immediately to the right if I needed it. I did. Twice more. My poor mom had to come through the front of the school and through the cloud of Oda the Evil to pick me up. Most of what happened later was lost in a haze of cramping, but I can say definitively that Mrs. Idiot was now officially in deep shit. When I returned to school, we had another teacher covering home ec, and the recipes no longer involved peppers. Post story FAQ. 1. Did you destroy the bathroom? No, thankfully for the poor janitor, I always made it in time, and the evil was defeated by flushes and aerosol-scented sprays. Fans and doors held wide open. No poor soul had to don a hazmat suit and do the unthinkable. 2. Could I have reported her without invoking the evil? Probably, but her lack of popularity had multiple complaints that failed to budge her from her throne. I was a teen and familiar with the habits of my body and what both of those things would do. My teen brain said that the suffering was worth taking for the team if it meant that actually harming a student would finally get rid of her. 3. Could we just make the recipe without the pepper? Nope. You had to go to her desk and take all the ingredients under her beady black eyes, and then she prowled around often, checking to make sure everything was made right. If something was left out, she would make you add it under her direct supervision. 4. What happened during the time you were in a haze? From what I was told, and this was years ago, please accept some fuzziness on the details, the aftermath was damage control, and then a bit more damage control. They were finally taking this seriously and were making a lot of appeasing noises to my mom, who is one of those quietly enraged people who said very little, and what was said was in a mild voice. But one look at her face and you knew you had made a terrible mistake. 5. How did Mrs. Idiot respond to being called out? Mrs. Idiot blew off a lot of criticism from both the principal and my mom. She was still adamant that intolerances weren't allergies, and therefore triggering them wasn't a big deal. My life obviously wasn't in danger, so maybe they should just stop coddling a picky child. I was 16 or 17 at that time, by the way. Students need to follow instructions and learn not to mouth off to people who were giving directions, because that was a skill necessary for the work world. Parents who let their kids do whatever they wanted put the burden on society to fix what their parents failed to do. Picky eaters are what she had to deal with, and she was not going to let a spoiled brat get away with such nonsense on her watch. She held this attitude right up until the principal told her that he would be recommending her to be fired for deliberately harming a student. And yes, he interrupted her, making a child sick was in fact considered harm. Then the switch flipped, and the waterworks and apologies began. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 146. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you could please click on the notification bell next to the video if you're subscribed. If you're not, just click subscribe first, and make sure it's set to all notifications to make sure you get notified when videos go live. There we are. Good stuff. Right. A little note on the last story. Yes, I believe it is important that we teach people how to follow instructions. That is a good and worthwhile life skill, I feel. However, it's also important that you teach them when not to follow instructions, like not eating things that are bad for you. Example, Sandra, please come to my office and take some notes. That is an acceptable thing for an employer to say to an employee. Steve, please go get coffee for the team. Take orders, milk, no sugar for me. That is acceptable if it's in Steve's job description. Come to my office and watch me wave my willy about. In that case, it would be acceptable for Steve and Sandra to say, no thank you, Mr. Bossman, that is not in my job description, and no one wants to see that. In that instance, both Steve and Sandra were standing up for themselves and not disobeying orders, because it is not acceptable for your employer to ask you to do things outside of your agreed contract. And here ends today's PSA on workplace etiquette. We will now return to your regularly scheduled outro. Okay, I don't think we have any special shout-outs today. No, I do have one tomorrow and Friday, though, if I'm remembering correctly, because brain good sometimes, brain not good other times. Or brain. Okay, let's... I think we'll just move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. Okay, we live in a world where brand names often get used as just the generic product name. Like Velcro, for example. Technically it's known as hook and loop fastener, but we all call it Velcro regardless of the brand. I don't know about in other countries, but here in the UK, a vacuum cleaner is generally just called a Hoover, even though it's a brand name. We have sellotape, which I believe in the US would be called Scotch tape, as just kind of an all-purpose name, even though, again, brand names. But oftentimes you might find the cheaper version, or the knockoff version, is more popular. Like, I don't think I've bought many pens in my life, but I don't think I've ever bought an actual biro pen. But that's often what they're called. I've bought many types of Band-Aids over the years, but I don't think the one I buy most is the actual Band-Aid. So what are products that we use as common everyday terms that you rarely buy the actual original for? You'll buy some other one. Maybe it's another brand name, maybe it's just more of a generic one. Leave your answers in a comment below. Right, I think we're going to wrap things up there for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.